Welcome to our wonderful agents and investors from across the country. Today is Thursday, October 5th, 2022, and this is All the Leads Mastermind podcast number 398. I just wanted to start with a brief announcement. As most of you probably know, we've been doing the Real Estate Coaches Corner on Tuesday nights. We are going to move that to Wednesday. Our amazing partner, Ty Leon Guerrera, has a Tuesday night commitment, and so we're going to move it to Wednesdays, same time. It'll be 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern time. Unfortunately, we will lose Kevin, who's been helping us out. I just wanted to do a shout out to Kevin. Thank you for getting us started, but it is Real Estate Coaches Corner, and Kevin is a financial services coach. So I want to thank him for helping us get started, bring his following to the call. And if any of you have any interest in what he does, I was going to tell you to go to Investment Dojo, investmentdojo.com. So, and I will tell you, we've had some really good calls. The last one went about an hour and 15 minutes. We got in depth with a lot of people. We had great participation. So please, it's a little less formal than this one. You know, it's kind of a free forum, and you can talk about any real estate related topic that you like. And my dog is barking, so I'm going to mute out and turn it over to Bruce.
All right, guys. Thanks, Jim. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to kind of start today briefly by giving a little bit of a commercial. And before I kind of get into the short commercial, I do want to let everyone know that this is an open dialogue mastermind. We are looking for your interaction, your feedback, your wins, and your questions. And even if you have an idea, something that's generating business for you in or out of the probate space, we'd like to hear those. I know your peers would like to hear some of those things as well. We lead with value here. We lead with giving. And as I kind of get into this, those of you that have never been here before or maybe never interacted with us before, there's a really easy way to interact with us. You would just go down in the bottom of your Zoom screen and hit the button that says raise hand, pop your hand up. We will call on you. We do have it where we have to ask you to unmute yourself. We had some what's called Zoom bombers over the past couple of months that kind of unmute themselves and say some unsavory things. So if you raise your hand, we will call on you and ask you to chime in. Again, that could be a question, it could be a comment, it could be a success story, it could be an idea. All right, so very interactive. We love to see your faces on here. If you're in a place where you can turn your camera on, please do. If you're not in a place to turn your camera on, don't worry about it. But we do like the interaction on this mastermind. If you've never been here before, we are conducting this as All the Leads. We provide probate, pre-probate, and divorce leads to our subscribers. There are quite a few people that come here to learn, and we are very happy to have you learning. Even if you're not a subscriber, we like to hear from you guys. We like to field your questions if you're just checking us out. But you guys should know that we do provide probate leads on a monthly basis to our subscribers all over the country. We also provide a ton of training opportunities. The vast majority of those training opportunities are free, whether you're a subscriber of All the Leads or not. Yesterday, we just wrapped up a Probate Foundations class that I teach once a month. Takes place on the first Wednesday of every month over the course of a couple of hours. And I see some familiar faces that are back today after taking the class yesterday, and I appreciate you guys. We also fulfill mail for not only our subscribers, but agents, investors all over the country that are doing mailing campaigns, either probate, farming, different things like that. So let us know if we can help. We're just here to kind of serve you guys and make sure that you have the business systems that you need around not only the probate space, but other spaces in the real estate industry. We do specialize in probate, though, and that's what most of the questions that you guys are going to hear today are going to be about. So with that said, I'll turn it over to my other coaches and find out if they have anything to contribute today. Tim, Chuck, you guys have anything?
Let's start with Chuck. Chuck, you got anything incredible that you'd like to impart? No, I'm just kind of scrambling here because I just got back from listing another estate. So was out at the, whoops, sorry about the sound here. My mic is flopping around. Yep. So relationships with the attorneys. It's really, really fantastic to, deliver for them. And basically they say, well, that was easy. And that's what we're striving for. So in some of my coaching calls this week, I want to bring up, and piggyback onto what Bruce said about the different trainings. Some of the strategy calls I've had this week are very heavily focused on what do I say? How do I have conversations with these folks? And we did a little role play, and, thank goodness they're on the phone, because it's a little bit of a scrunchy face, from me to say, oh my goodness, that's not how we want to be approaching these folks. So it's really important. We have an excellent training. Bruce does a fantastic job of laying out a call structure that you can modify directly for you, your personality, your business structure in your local market. But it's based on a whole lot of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, on how to handle objections, how to be in charge of and lead that conversation in a good way. And you will get better results with a higher skill level in having conversations with your prospects. I can't reinforce enough how important that is going to be for your success with any of the types of leads that we're able to deliver you here at All the Leads. So please do look that up and take the time, because it will make a huge difference in your business.
Yep. Thanks, Chuck. And anyone that does want to take that class, it's called Prospecting Mastery. It's the third Wednesday and Thursday of every month. So coming up here in 2 weeks. It is about a 5.5 to 6 hour class, and it's worth it. The idea behind that and behind prospecting in the probate space is you've got to recognize that people are going through a hard time. Emotions can run kind of high. And the last thing that you want them to interpret you doing is that you don't want them to interpret you saying, hey, I'm sorry, so-and-so died. Do you want to sell the house? Because that's what they have a tendency to hear. They have a tendency when they're emotional and going through this process to believe that you're just chasing an ambulance and trying to get rich off of their loss. And that's not what we're here for. So we want to craft our conversation approach very specifically to build rapport, gain information, and establish a relationship that turns to business normally in a few months. It's typically going to turn to business a couple of months after you establish that initial conversation. There are plenty of examples of times when you get someone on the phone and they immediately invite you out to sell the house. All right, plenty of examples. But if you can build your dialogue approach for the long game, that couple of month game, while you're helping the family through probate, helping them with other services, you'll get a lot of business. And that's exactly what I teach in that 2-day class here in a couple of weeks. Thanks for the plug, Chuck. But Chuck's absolutely right. And by the way, so Chuck kind of mentioned making a little bit of a cringe face. I've done that many, many times when I'm doing role plays with ISAs, with agents, with investors. I've kind of cringed a little bit, and I realized that people have cringed on certain things that I've said in role play and prospecting as well. What I want everyone to know is just because you don't have it down perfectly does not mean that you really have an excuse to not make the call. There's no better educator than failure. There's absolutely no better educator. And I'm going to challenge you guys to get out there. And even if you don't have it down perfectly, get out there and make an effort, do the activities, because if you feel like you've messed up, you're going to learn something from it. Just don't let screw ups or mess ups deter you from taking the activity. Figure out what you did wrong, what might have gone wrong, and make an adjustment. I've heard sales trainers that always have the exact perfect thing to say every single time for years. And I've never really trusted those sales trainers, because I don't believe that they've necessarily screwed up that many times. And you want to learn, you want to model people who've messed up and probably still mess up. I can tell you guys that I mess up all the time. If I'm prospecting, I'll say something and I'll get off the phone and go, well, that didn't work. what can I do to make it better? And then once I figure out what to do to make it better, I say, okay, how can I package this in a way that I can teach all the leads subscribers or people that are prospecting probate to do it better themselves? So stay around us, stay in the mastermind, stay in the training, and you'll get better. But most of all, go out and do the activities that are going to lead to your improvement.
Yeah, and I would also say that taking the time for a strategy coaching call, if you're a subscriber, run your pitch, if you're struggling with what to say and how to have the dialogue, use me as a testing ground. We can whittle that out together. I mean, it's you get one of those free calls every single month. I'm here to help you get unstuck.
Yeah.
How do they do that, Chuck? Reiterate for them how they engage with you to do that, please.
Yep. So for subscribers, just go under the training drop-down menu. You'll see the page for professional real estate coaching. And there's a couple different boxes there. Look for the monthly strategy coaching call box. It's the middle box on the second row. Schedule now. My calendar's up to date. You'll see what times are available. Find a mutually available time and let's get it in.
Yeah, and I think that's one deliverable to take away from this. Everybody who's on this call, the one thing that we all know is that we don't know everything. And we know, in a lot of cases, we know more than we think we know, but we also don't know everything. And the value of that whole premise of a coach is that you're dealing with somebody who has done it, who does it, who's doing it regularly. Both Chuck and Bruce are regularly involved. They actually do buy and sell real estate. They do what they're doing. They're not just here part of this, and they're not part of the old axiom, if you can't do, you teach. Jim has been a successful investor for years. I've been a real estate investor for a while. I'm probably the least experienced. I'm more the business and tech side of this, but I've learned enough to keep myself out of trouble on the investment side during this period of time. So we're like you guys, but between us, there's not much of anything we haven't dealt with. So if you're not taking advantage of that one-on-one time with a coach in the course of a month, even if all you do is get on it and say, hey, I'd like to role play a little bit, let the coach talk to you, beat the coach up, you let the coach beat you up a little bit, give you some hard things to go do. I'm going to give you one thing to think about. I watched an interview with Aaron Judge, the New York Yankee who just hit 62 home runs. And the person that was interviewing him said, well, your God-given skills and all this, got you to where you are. And he smiled and he said, along the way, I practiced a good bit. And he said, the one thing that I'll tell you is, he said, I have spent thousands of hours in a batting cage. He said, I take batting practice every day religiously. He said, I'll take extra batting practice. He said, I work on what I do every day. He said, I'm not bragging about it. He said, this isn't easy. He said, I do it because I know that the next time somebody throws me a pitch I haven't seen before, I want to know, I look at it and I see what came down the pike. And the next time I'm in batting practice, he said, we've got 6 pitchers who know how to throw that pitch. And they may not normally do it in batting practice, but I ask them to throw it. He said, now the next time I see it, I see the way the seam is turning on that fastball. He said, I know where that ball is going to go. That's where I swing. Well, that's an analogy that applies very well to what we're doing. You haven't seen or heard everything, but if you do see it and you do hear it from, doing that one-on-one, you're going to be ready to deal with the next time it comes down the pipe, or you're going to take an action that you would not normally think about taking because your coach said, hey, have you done this? You go, oh, no, but I could go do that. So great comment there, Chuck. Very important.
Tim, I was going to add, this has come up a recurring theme on the 2 Coaches Corner calls. But if you haven't read the book called Outliers, fascinating book. I read it years ago, but it's what diversely different people from different occupations had in common. And should I give away the key point of the book? The one thing is they had done what they do 10,000 or more times. There is something with doing and failing that you learn. You learn what works and what doesn't work. So read that book. And I wholeheartedly agree, do a private coaching call. It's free. We offer it. If you're too shy or you just feel like you're wasting people's time, come on the group call. You got 5 or 6 coaches that can answer the questions for you. So do
You're fading out there, bud.
both.
Yeah, Bruce, Jim, you're not coming through very well. You're getting
I'm
beat
done.
up.
All right.
I
Hey,
was
let
done.
me just kind of tell those of you that that maybe don't follow baseball, don't know what's going on. Aaron Judge just broke the non-steroid users home run record for the season. Back 20 years ago, there were 3 people that broke the home run record, and they demolished it, and they were all proven to be doing steroids. And he just broke the record that was outdone by non-steroid users, supposedly.
Oh, natural.
Roger Maris.
What the point that I take out of that interview, because I didn't see the interview where he was talking about the practice, but I want to know how many times Aaron Judge struck out. All right, and I want to know he's accomplished this huge feat, hitting 62 home runs in a season. And I guarantee within the last week, he's struck out multiple times. So you can be the best at what you do and still experience failure, and be the best at what you do and experience success as well.
Hey, Bruce, the year that Babe Ruth set the records to start with, when they thought it was a record never be beat, Babe Ruth hit 60 home runs. He also led the major leagues that year in strikeouts.
Right.
He led the majors in strikeouts that year. We got 2 people with their hands in the air. Let's get to them.
All right, let's go to Dwayne. Before I go to Dwayne, unmute yourself. But before I do, we've got a chat in from Meredith talking about switching to using the words estate solution. So I'm calling because I have estate solutions instead of probate, and guards have gone down. So there's always, everyone's going to have a different way of introducing themselves and presenting what they do. But that's something that I thought was pretty powerful and important. So be working on your craft consistently, guys. Just because I say something a certain way doesn't mean that you have to. All right. This is the things that we teach are a way. As long as you are constantly working on improving, you're going to do well. So let's go to Dwayne. If you would unmute yourself, please. I gave you permissions.
You hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yesterday in the class you taught, Bruce, there was a brief mention of the pre-probate leads. And I didn't want to interrupt what you were doing at the time, but I was wondering if it's okay if a few minutes could be taken to expand for the benefit of those here. I think that you've offered them now for several months. I'm not sure how many, but I'm curious if you have some comments on how that's going, what the pros and cons are compared to the regular probate.
Tim, would you like to take a crack at that first?
Sure. So, first off, Dave, great question. Thank you. And it's great that you brought it up. We got some questions about that also in the coaches corner last night as well. And we were asked to highlight the differences between that and probate. So let's start with, what it actually represents. So with probate begins by the filing of probate and the appointment of a personal representative. That's the point at which, for us, that becomes a lead that we drop into our system for you guys to start working the system to use. And we give you the personal representative's name and all the contact information we can gather about the personal representative, multiple phone numbers, a good deliverable address for the letters we want you to send out, and all that info. We also get the last known address of the decedent. Where did they reside, or where did they take mail when they last took mail, according to the Postal Service. Then the last thing we get is, if indeed an attorney of record is on file with the probate, we give you that. It isn't always the case that it's there, but we try to do it. And in most cases, we provide you with attorney information as we can gather it. On the other hand, on pre-probate begins with a notice of death. That can come from, we are on subscriptions for multiple sources for that. We look in newspapers, we look at legacy.com, we look at all that sort of stuff to get it. And we look at notices of death, wherever notices of death come from. We start with a notice of death. We then take that information and we run it through our AI stuff to get as best we can out of it to determine who the heirs are. And in that case, typically we're looking at the words survived by in some sort of a notice of death. So it's in the newspaper that way, or it's on Legacy or Ancestry or any of the places that that info comes from. We then do skip tracing on those people to pull the data on the supposed heirs. We're beginning to look at places where we actually are drilling down into the will and seeing what kind of data we can gather from that, because we know if we do it out of the will, we're pretty sure that's an heir. And, you know, if we look at the will, there's some things we can determine about that customer. And we're just beginning that. Some states we can get it, some places they don't publish the will. It's not a matter of public record. It just depends. So the issue and the difference is that typically we have looked at it to say that probate is obviously the product that we started with, and probate was always a great product for agents because the person who is the PR typically wants to get that estate closed by selling the real estate, if there is real estate to sell. The flip side to that is that on the pre-probate side, we don't know who the person is going to be who sells that estate. If there's real estate to be sold, you don't know in advance who the PR is, but it typically is a great opportunity for an investor to begin to go in. And if there is an immediate need for cash out of that estate, for example, if someone has recently passed and they're the breadwinner, and all of a sudden the income for the family is going down and the only big tangible asset they have left is that property, then whoever's in that estate, whoever is likely to inherit that, is going to want to move that pretty quickly and might be open to a quick cash offer. It's also the reason that we went out to develop a cash advance program for probate to be able to furnish dollars to people that are in that situation if they've got a quick need. But typically the biggest difference is that, and I hate to use the term, but the loss is fresher. We get the pre-probate leads immediately upon death. So if someone passed last week and we gather leads for a county this week for pre-probate, they're going to be on that list. So you literally could be speaking to someone. Oh, thank you, John. Annie, please stop. I'm going to mute myself so I can yell at my.
All right, I'll take over here. So in other words, guys, pre-probate is going to be something that's a little lower cost to acquire, less competition in the pre-probate space, more uncertainty in the pre-probate space. So there's a cost and benefit and potential detriment to working leads that are that fresh. But there's also potential benefits as well. So just wanted everyone to know that our bread and butter is probate, that we can get pre-probate in the vast majority of counties around the country as well, if you're interested. And one technique that you might use if you're pursuing pre-probates may be to mail directly to the decedent's last known address, because you don't always know which one of the heirs that we give you, and we'll give you 2, 4, 10 heirs. You don't always know which one's making decisions. So you may want to mail to the decedent's last known address in the off chance. Just realize that it's not an exact science with pre-probate.
Is
Right.
there a
Bruce,
code?
I'm not sure if Tim mentioned this. With the pre-probate, we do cross-check it against every database in the country. We can tell you what real estate is owned.
Yep.
And then the other point, or is likely to be owned. The other point, we do have some people, especially realtors who wear both hats, who get both. You know, they get the pre-probate for an investment product, and they get and they start working them, and then they're put on notice when the probate is filed, and then they still could do either, but they get an early start with their investor hat, and then when it is filed, they may put their other realtor hat on. But you can do both, although most people choose one or the other.
Another beautiful thing about pre-probate that I'll say is we don't know if it's going to have to go through probate. We do know we automatically run it against our Property Plus skip tracer. So whereas probate, you have to pay extra to get Property Plus. It's not data that we automatically have. But on pre-probate, we run it through Property Plus to try to identify real estate that's held but you don't know if it's going to go through probate. These are folks that might file probate in 12 years. They might file probate in a week. They might not have to file probate at all. They may be a trust. So it is a way to pick up leads that you may never see in your probate list. So normally I encourage people that if you're doing probate alone, that's perfectly fine. I encourage people that are doing pre-probate to also do probate, because many times it's two completely different lists. You might end up seeing that pre-probate on your probate list in a few months. You might not. All right. Dwayne, what was your other follow-up question?
Wondering if you had a significant number of subscribers and enough to be getting feedback as to how, and are you able to do some coaching or offer coaching on that?
Well, it's the same general approach as far as coaching goes. It's the same approach as probate. Yes, we can book a time on Chuck's coaching schedule, and he can coach you through that. But it's the same. It's the same type of individual that you're dealing with. So the same approach. We do have a number of subscribers. Probate's still bread and butter, so we probably have 4 times more folks doing probate than we do pre-probate. And I will tell you that pre-probate it's not going to be the exact same success as probate, but you are going to have a lot less competition. So absolutely, we've got plenty of people that have closed deals out of pre-probate at this point. It's only 4 or 5 months old, I think now, and I've heard plenty of people close deals. It's just a little bit of a different conversation because it's just a more recent loss. So you've got to be a lot more empathetic.
Understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Dwayne. Okay, guys, I've got 2 other hands up. I want to make 2 really quick, one quick announcement and then one correction of something that I said a couple of weeks ago that just popped into my mind. The announcement is those of you that are on this call live, everyone should know how to raise their hand and interact with us, ask their questions, share their wins. If you are watching us on a live stream, you can just drop your chat into the chat bar on the live stream, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and we will get that, and I'll answer it live on the call as long as we have time. The next thing that I was going to say before I call on you, Joan, and I'm just going to go ahead and give you unmute permissions now, Joan. Next thing I'm going to say is 2 weeks ago, I wasn't here last week. 2 weeks ago, we had a question that was a really, really good question that I glossed over, and I did not spend the time paying attention to the question. It was a disservice to the person that asked the question. And it was also a disservice to you guys because I potentially gave some really bad information that I need to correct. So the individual had asked about offering a $500 credit to people that work with you. And I just moved past that question so quickly and was called on it by a few of our on the ball subscribers. And I do know, I've done this long enough to know you can't pay someone to do business with you. Okay. That's illegal, especially if you are a licensed agent. There is a way to incentivize someone to do business with you without directly saying, hey, if you work with me, I will give you $500 back under the table. You can't do that. The way to incentivize, and this is where the spirit of my answer a few weeks ago was supposed to have come from, would have been to do something like, hey, if you work with me, I'll stage your house for free up to $1,000, or I'll cover X expense for you up to a certain amount of money. It just cannot in any way be a financial incentive, especially something that goes to them kind of under the table and off of the settlement statement. All right. I just wanted to clarify that because a few people had caught me on it and I didn't even realize that I'd given the answer that I had. So wanted to correct that now so that no one was doing anything illegal.
So Bruce, are you basically saying that the fact that you encourage them to violate RESPA was probably not a good thing?
Probably not a good thing, no.
I just wanted to be sure that's what you were trying to get across.
Yep, exactly. All right. So let's go to Joan.
Okay, so my question is, I've heard of people getting leads, working leads in other states. For example, I live in Arizona, I'm licensed in Arizona, but I'm also licensed in California. If I use leads in California, how am I going to service those leads? Would I have another agent on the ground over there?
Yes, ideally you have an agent on the ground. I know of plenty of agents that work multiple markets and they fly back and forth. They're just naturally doing that anyway. Hop on an Allegiant or Southwest flight for $150, and you can work all your appointments in a block. If you're not making it a habit to bounce between the two markets, get yourself partners that can do it. One of the things that I've done in the past in markets that might have been slightly out of my convenient reach is to have what I would consider someone like an acquisition manager. So they're not necessarily going in and presenting numbers or anything like that. They're more of an inspector. They're
Okay,
more
like
the
a field
person.
agent.
Yep, exactly. They go in, they get an idea, they give you all the videos, everything that you need, and then especially if you have MLS access, you can run comps on your end once you see what the neighborhood looks like, see what the neighbors' yards look like. Are there cars on blocks? Okay, is there mold? You have video pictures of everything, so you could do it affordably that way, or you could get a partner agent. And this is the way that I normally lean in my business, would be to work with a partner agent that gets kind of plugged in with me in the leads. They go through the training, they know how to have the conversations, and then co-work that business with them.
Okay,
Yeah,
Hey,
couple of
Bruce.
different ways.
yeah, thank you.
Hey, Bruce, why don't you also talk about, her circumstance is unique in that, well, not unique, but her circumstance is that she's licensed in both states. But it is very frequent, particularly in people who are working high retirement areas, that they'll get a person who passed away, for example, we'll use that example, somebody who died in Phoenix, because Phoenix and Scottsdale are high retirement areas, or South Florida is a big retirement area, or anywhere in Florida, big retirement area, where people move there, they still have property in the state that they came from. So talk a little bit about how you find it and work the referral side of it as well.
Why don't you talk about that? I'm following, but not all the way.
Well, maybe Jim is better at this, but Jim is always talking about finding a referral partner. Jim, do you want to kick around that a little bit?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about a licensed referral partner or not, Tim?
Yeah, in other words, you've got an opportunity for somebody, they own property in New York. You're not licensed in New York.
Oh,
So
yeah. You can, we've had numerous subscribers that, they do a deal in Phoenix and then people say, oh, by the way, I own another house in South Florida. And they'll go to our, all the leads mastermind, find one of our agents there and refer it to them. And you can get a very healthy referral fee if you've done business, and not to be greedy, but I've had situations where I really just needed, they had agreed that they were going to go ahead and work. Even in my case, it was they were going to sell the property to me, but I really never buy anything without looking at it. I needed boots on the ground to run the comps, and and so that agent. Pam's had the same thing in short sales. The property has to be listed, so we've had cases where the agent will put it in the multiple listing if required, or they'll just go visit the property, do a market analysis, give a condition report. And if you can't collect a commission, the agent will generally give you I've seen 50% referral fees in situations like that, because the agent had somebody that said, yes, I want to sell, show up, I'm ready to go. So you can get a very healthy referral fee by having someone licensed. Because the reality, I know where Tim's leading with this. If they're not licensed, you may want to find a contractor. You may want to find, if you're trying to buy the house and you're not sure you're going to buy it, then you do want to find a realtor, because either way, you guys can participate together on the deal. So it kind of depends on the situation, but does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, the whole point is that part of building your practice, if you are, and I'm just going to stay with the same example, if you're in a market where you look at your leads every month, and as you begin to work them, you find out that almost every time you do it, you're finding that there are, let's just say that you get 80 leads, and you find out of those 80 leads, maybe half a dozen of them are having someone in a certain other geographic marketplace that you're not licensed. You need to go find a real estate referral partner in that marketplace so that you can monetize those leads by, calling, Billy or Sally in the remote market and saying, hey, I've got another lead for you. Let's go get this done. And, you can either get a literally a referral or find another way to work it out so that you're monetizing that lead.
Bottom line, guys, is we have subscribers and followers that are heavily involved in our Facebook group and our community in a very large portion of the areas around the country. If you want someone that knows probate and you run into a family that owns real estate outside of your area, go in the Facebook group, All the Leads Mastermind, and put it in there. There will be someone close by that knows probate, that knows how to help the families, and you can make a referral fee out of it. If you are a licensee, and we did have a chat a few minutes ago, I'm not 100% sure that I'm following the chat. Maybe it's just my brain today, so I didn't follow Tim, and I'm not completely following the question. But if you're an investor and you're not licensed, you have to be really careful. You can't collect referral fees. You can't get paid for a commission for business. So we just want to make sure that everyone's doing the right thing. But you can find people to work business on a co-op basis, something like that, in a lot of other markets when you run into families that have real estate elsewhere. So just think out of the box, form relationships, and don't pass up on those houses that might be owned out of your area, because there will typically be a way to work that business.
And Bruce, I didn't do a real good job elaborating on it either. What I was trying to say is, if you're an investor and investor/realtor and you get an out of area referral, contact a realtor in that market to go do. And what I've done in the past is said, I want to buy it, but if I buy it, I'll fix it up and I'll relist it with you. That's a huge incentive for somebody just to run out and you just promised them a listing. If they'll do the CMA and give you a property analysis and do a report for you. There's ways to make it work. And I think your point is well taken. Go into our Facebook group, describe your situation, and ask for help. Somebody will volunteer.
That's whether you're an investor or a realtor. If you're an investor, you can find other investors in that remote market that you can move property to, and you're not bound by some of the strictures that the agency side of this is. You can find an investor there that you can say, hey, I've got this great opportunity for you. If you're interested in doing it, let's work out a deal where, we do a 60-40 or a 80-20, whatever it is. And, they'll be happy to do it, because right now we're getting back towards having some challenges. In some cases, finding available inventory is certainly becoming an issue, certainly with motivated sellers. And that's what you're always dealing with in probate, is that you're dealing with a motivated seller. When you're to that point, you've got property that needs to get moved.
Yep.
But it's a really good lead.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, guys, I'm going to go to White next. We do have room for other questions. We've got about 17, 18 minutes before we wrap up. Unless White's question is really long, we've got room for a couple more questions. So you can chat them in if you're watching on a live stream, and raise your hand, and we'll call on you if you're watching here live on the Zoom call. White, what do you got?
Hey, I got a phone call from a guy that was in South Dakota, and he wanted me to help him sell his sister's place here in Georgia. And he'd hired an attorney, and the sister had actually left a house to a bookkeeper. She stated in the will, but the trick to this is she died before the decedent died.
Oh, the bookkeeper, the person that it was left to.
The bookkeeper died. So I called an attorney that I know, and they really couldn't answer the question. I called because all it said was it would have been like, I leave my house to Bruce Hill, period. It didn't say any, heirs or anything. So then I called another attorney. He said, I would make the probate judge rule on it. Well, he called his attorney back, and the attorney said there's nothing to rule on. So I'm like, and I talked to this guy 3 times. So I finally, my closing attorney told me, he said, you need to call this attorney. He's the best guy around here. So I don't have a outcome for this yet, but we kind of think that the brother is going to get the house because there was no heirs. It did not say heirs. Well, I had never run across this as long as I've been doing these, and I just found it real interesting. But a lot of he was willing to the house is probably worth $300,000. He was willing to just say, no, I'm going to give it to him, even though his sister was going to change. She meant to change the will, but she died before she did. So, my whole point is if you talk to these people enough and try to help them, I've got to call him today or tomorrow, but he's supposed to he did pay the attorney for a $400 consult, which I thought was great. And I think he'll end up getting the house, but I don't know. I'll follow back up with you and let you know.
Hey, White,
sus-
the lady that died, the bookkeeper, does she have heirs?
We think so, Tim, but we're not sure. But it did not state heirs in the will.
Because typically a will, whether it's a written or a holographic will, the state has usually got some sort of statute that either does or does not impute the statement a person and their heirs. They'll either say that's what that means or that isn't what that means. It's specifically the person named, or it's that person and any of their decedents.
Well, she left everything else except for the house to her brother.
Right.
And that's why, we don't know. But the attorney that told me to call this elder law attorney, he said, this is one of the worst written wills I've ever seen in my life.
So
And he said if he was closing on it, he would not disperse money. It was that bad.
Well,
He said I would.
Situation where the brother is going to have to contest the will to get it done. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, and that's why I told him to talk to that attorney that should know.
Right. Because it literally depends on what statute in the state is. If the state imputes a name to be the name and heirs, you got one situation. If it's specific to, it's got to be Sally or Joe and nobody else, well, then he's home free. Then it would revert back to him. Typically.
Yeah, I don't know. I just found it very interesting.
Well, now I'm curious. I want to hear what happens this week.
Yeah, I'll let y'all know. But I just, I didn't. It was nothing else. And when she died, the bookkeeper died. Prior to, we didn't really know what to do.
Did she die prior to the decedent with the estate passing away, or did she die prior to probate being filed?
She died before the decedent died.
Okay, got it. My inkling would be that it goes to the brother, but man, that's going to require a lot of verification. But that's my suspicion, is that you're
well, and the other thing that I thought was real odd was that the attorney that he hired, she pretty much refused to even send it to the probate judge to let him even look at it. She said there's nothing to look at.
Who did? Who refused that?
The attorney that he originally hired that filed the probate, but since then he's gone to and hired another attorney that specializes in this type of stuff.
Yeah, so one attorney was probably either really on top of her game, or she was trying to be shady.
Well, she's an online attorney, so I'm thinking the second one is a much better option.
Higher likelihood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I'll let y'all know.
Interesting scenario, White. I love it when you come on. I know you're always going to throw us a doozy and then be able to educate us when you figure out what the answer is.
Hey, White, just a bigger overall lesson that you reminded me of. I was in my 20s, relatively new in the business, and one of the first attorneys I ever worked with told me, you don't need to have every clause you put in the contract reviewed by an attorney. Just two things: make sure it's not ambiguous, and make sure everybody's intentions are clearly stated. In most cases, and boy, they did a terrible job with the way they wrote that will.
Well, and this will also, she had, I think, 3 other siblings, and she stated specifically in there they were not to get anything. There was only one brother supposed to get anything, and then that bookkeeper get the house. So
Yep.
it's gonna be real interesting to see what transpires with this.
Okay.
For sure.
Good deal. All right, folks. What else do we got?
One other thing, Bruce. So let me just, this is an evil thing I'm going to say here, but you might want to get to know the family of the bookkeeper as well.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I don't think there's a husband, and I think there's 2 kids, but that's all I know.
If it looks like it's going to go to fall that way, you want to be in front of that as well, so that you might reach out directly to them and say, we were originally working with this because we probably, we have a buyer for the house, and I've still got the buyer, so I just want to work with whoever I
Okay.
can work with. So
Okay.
I wouldn't do it in advance because you're waking them up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But make sure you know who they are, and if it looks like it's falling in that direction, then you become the shining armor guy coming in for them as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Tim, along those lines too, regardless of which way it's going, if it appears to be going in that direction, if they both get attorneys, there's probably going to be a compromise made. So you might be in a position to broker the compromise between the two of them. I mean, if there's a significant amount of equity, they may not.
Well,
it's
the house is paid for, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
$300,000 in equity is going to make a lot of people do some unusual things.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Folks, we are going to, well, we've got a few extra minutes here, and if we don't see any hands, while I'm kind of making a couple of semi-closing statements,
Bruce,
we'll
you've got one in chat, bud.
wrap it up. I was just getting something from Alyssa. So we are going to be at the NAR convention in Orlando in November. I believe it's November 9th through 11th, or 11th through 13th. So anyone that's going to the National Association of Realtors convention, make sure to let us know. Shoot us something beforehand, and if you don't, then make sure to plug in. But we're excited. We hadn't been to a convention since before COVID, I don't think. But we're going to be there. We're going to have a couple of booths, and we want to see you guys, meet you in person. Something that we'd really like to start doing is getting out into the communities more, so that we can turn some of these Zoom pictures into real live connections sometime soon. But that's going to be the 11th through 13th. And we do have another chatted in question. So is there anything that you can recommend when calling spouses? You have the hardest time calling them. I'm not going to call the name of the person. I don't know that they wanted to admit having a hard time calling spouses or not. But most of us do have a hard time calling surviving spouses. It's a delicate situation. I can tell you that a lot of times the spouse handles this situation better than the kids do, just from experience. Many siblings and especially children of a decedent have a really, really hard emotional time with it. A lot of times, if they're the child of the decedent, it may be the first loss that they've had. A spouse many times has gone through this before, maybe not with the spouse, but they've gone through it before. They're going to be, in a lot of instances, pretty level-headed. They might be grieving internally, but they're usually handling things pretty level-headedly. I just lost a close friend of mine about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago. and it's amazing. His spouse is just extremely calm and neutral and level-headed, and it's just a different way of reacting. You got to roll your sleeves up and get busy. Now, one thing to recognize is that the spouse of someone that's passed away that's living in the home may not move quite as quickly as siblings or children, because they're already living in the house. It's occupied a lot of times. So they might not move quickly. I do encourage you guys to go ahead and call, let them know that you work with families that are settling the estate. Let them know that it looks like this might have been your husband, this might have been your wife. Is that correct, or do I have that wrong? Yep. I'm assuming, and then I would just lead with, I'm assuming you're living in the house right now. Yep. Okay. Find out if they're living there, and then move on with the conversation. So you're gonna treat it very calm and neutral. You don't want to go too high or low on your voice, and just get some information. If they say, no, I moved out a long time ago. Oh, well, is one of your kids or a family member living there? No, it's empty. Well, how long are you going to keep that? Okay. So you can sort of backdoor into the real estate conversation if you ask the right questions, but don't shy away from surviving spouses. It takes a slightly different tone of voice and conversation approach, not massively different, but just slightly different. But there's a lot of opportunity there, and a surviving spouse, many times, especially if their kids don't live close or if they don't have family close, they got a huge job ahead of them, and they're going to get overwhelmed really fast. So call and be an empathetic help. Do not shy away from them.
Hey, Bruce, why would they be, and I understand it potentially would be that in pre-probate, if they're survived by, a husband or wife, I get it. But on regular probate, about the only time that you're going to be necessarily talking, at least initially, to the spouse would be if the spouse is the PR, right?
Right. Yep. And it could be one of the additional heirs. So, I mean, we'll turn over the personal representative, and then a couple of other heirs in many instances. And one of those could be a surviving spouse. But most of the time, if you're talking to them, it's because they're the personal representative.
Right.
Yeah. And in that particular case,
Kind of unusual that you're doing that with the spouse if they're not involved as the PR, because typically your interface on probate is with the PR.
Yeah, normally.
Yeah.
Sure.
And as you're going through and you get your initial lead list, it's important to look at each and every probate case. The first thing we're looking for is out-of-state PRs, what White was just talking about, right? Getting in touch with those folks that need help with feet on the street. As you're going through each and every probate case, you do have the ability to identify, does the PR have the same address as the decedent? Does it appear that they could be a surviving spouse? And then, and you can even tag those in our CRM functionality to, identify them as a surviving spouse. So, you can be prepared for that call session and, get yourself in that mindset and just go and focus directly on making those calls in that approach. So we do have the data. You can, we highly recommend that you go through and you be prepared for all of your call sessions by knowing what's the opportunity that you're looking at.
Mm-hmm. Steve Carney just messaged in and he said, if it's vacant, you should ask about vacant property insurance or vacant property rider. Absolutely something we've taught for a long time, and good, very good point. I'm going to expand on that briefly and let you guys know an analogy that I just kind of came up with about a week and a half ago, and just having a conversation with someone. And we were talking about what you're looking for on a call, and what makes a really good phone prospector is someone that looks for loose threads. So I use the analogy of a sweater, and some sweaters are really tightly knit together and they're flawless. And then other times you got a little thread. And if you grab that thread and start pulling on it, the whole thing could eventually unravel. So when you're prospecting, what you're looking for is you're looking for loose threads. Sometimes there are no loose threads. That's the person that says, oh no, I'm keeping the house. I'd never sell. I've lived here for 30 years. My kids are going to move in when I'm gone. Okay. That's a sweater that's tightly knit together. But when you run into someone that says something like, yeah, I'm really not sure what we're going to do, they're not lying to you. They probably are telling the truth, but it's a loose thread. And that's ultimately what you are looking for. Vacant property writer, that's a loose thread. You are looking for areas of confusion, uncertainty, discomfort, areas where they might be stuck. And you need to be able to fill those areas with solutions. And it's not always instantly selling the real estate. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But find a loose thread and pull on that thread a little bit to uncover areas where they don't have all the answers. They don't know what they're doing yet. And then be able to offer a solution. Think out of the box, offer vacant property writer, offer to put a no trespassing sign up if it's in an area that they're worried about a squatter moving in. Offer to connect them with an estate sale company. The list goes on. But I want you guys looking for loose threads in your conversation and pull on that thread a little bit. You're not always looking for the person that says, thank God you called. I don't know you. I didn't know you before a minute ago, but why don't you come sell the house? You're not going to get a lot of that. You have to work at it a little bit. But because it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of skill, nothing substantial, you're going to differentiate yourself from everyone else that might be going after the business and might take what they say at face value.
Hey, Bruce, one thing if I could add to, I think it was a Clubhouse call, you talked about the loose thread. One thing I thought was really brilliant that a lot of people overlook, it's not only the words, it's the way they say something. Sometimes you can hear a significant upswing in their voice, or they'll say something without a whole lot of conviction. And you can say, forgive me for saying so, but you didn't sound too convinced that you don't want to sell the property. Can I ask you why?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, don't listen not only to what they say, but how they say it. That can be just as important.
Yep. 100%. Classic example is, we don't know what we're going to do yet. Immediately, I know that that's someone that's probably going to sell a house. Immediately, we don't know what we're going to do yet. Are they lying to me?
On the table.
Probably not. They're probably not lying, but they are probably going to decide to sell the house. And that's one of the biggest clues that you want to look for is to someone that you want to work with. Now, that person that says we don't know what we're going to do yet, one of the last things you want to do, unless you're incredibly strong, and there are people on this call and listening to this that are really strong and can handle it more aggressively than this. But the last thing that I want most of you doing is saying, hey, I know you don't know what you're going to do yet, but you're probably going to want to sell. Why don't I come over and give you a proposal? Okay. You need to treat it diplomatically and use influence instead of being a bull that just barrels through the wall. Okay. Use influence to gather information. And a lot of times that information will reveal to the person on the same call what they really want to do. They might not have known before you called. And because you diplomatically navigate that call and influence them, many times they'll end up on the call going, yeah, we're probably going to sell, even if they didn't know it the first time.
Well, Bruce, one thing is for sure, that if they tell you they don't know and you don't find a way to get it across to them what you might be able to do for them, they're never going to know. So if you don't take that opportunity to take at least one more bite out of the apple and see if you can get a little bit more engagement out of it, you're never going to get there. You've given up. And that's kind of the point you're making, is that take that, I don't know what we're going to go do. And you've used this before about, almost everybody that I talk to in this situation, they're never really sure what they're going to go do. And what I can do when you're in that situation is give you some stuff to offer you some perspective you may not have. And on you go.
So we call this, or something really close to that, I call it the Tony Robbins approach. And I know Tony didn't invent everything that he gets credit for inventing. So I'm sure it came from someone else originally. But I was watching his documentary several years ago that was really popular on Netflix. It's really good. Just be prepared for a little bit of language in it. Really good documentary. And he interviewed this girl on the front row, young girl, and he said, hey, what's one thing in life that's holding you back? And she said, I don't know. And I don't believe that she was lying about that answer. I think she really didn't know. She hadn't thought about it before. And he said, hey, I completely understand that you don't know. If you did know, what do you think it would be? And all of a sudden she blurted the answer out. Well, we want to use the same thing when we get, I don't know, on our probate conversations. We don't know what we're going to do yet. Hey, it sounds like there's several other people involved in that decision. Yeah, I've got my brother and my sister and my cousin and my niece and whoever. All right. Hey, I completely understand that you don't know what you're going to do yet. If you had your way, do you think you'd lean towards selling the house or holding on to it? And now you get to the bottom of what that individual's answer might be instead of the collective family answer. And if you have an ally in the sale, or if maybe you should be talking to someone else in the family about selling. All right. So at least it gets you to the bottom of what that person's desire is. And they may not have thought about it before. So rephrasing it a second way will get you the truth.
Yep.
Bruce,
All right.
One more question that I don't think we're going to have time to get to, and that was somebody's asked about divorce, and could we give them some information about that? And I think we don't really have time to do that justice on this call. If you're interested in divorce, please talk to your sales rep about divorce in your county. It probably is available now. We literally just kind of got started with it, and we've probably been at it now for, I think we're in our 4th or 5th month of offering divorce, and we've had some good successes. Anecdotally, we know that, there divorce is a 2-for-1. You've got 2 people that are going to be in some kind of transition if the divorce is finalized, and it's a great opportunity. But we'll talk some more about that, I think, on our next call. And I don't want you to think we're blowing you off and not getting to your question.
Yep. And I don't even see the question, so I'm glad you saw it. All right. Perfect. Jim, take us home.
All right. I was going to say, I know you probably don't have time to be on both calls, but if you did, I would show up next Wednesday and Thursday and be on both of our calls. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. I want to particularly thank those that actively participated. And as I just alluded to, we actually give you 2 opportunities every week, to interact with us and other successful coaches around the country. So take one thing that inspired you on this call, go out and put it into practice, and come back either next Wednesday at 8 p.m. or Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern and share your results with the group. Thank you so much, everybody. Make it a great week, and we'll talk to you same time next Wednesday and Thursday. Take care.